welcome to Accessibility in Microsoft Excel. My name is Dr. Michael Gillespie. I am the director of the Faculty Development and Innovation Center at Eastern Illinois University. And in this video, I want to talk about considerations when thinking about accessibility, especially digital accessibility in Microsoft Excel. A few things I'm going to talk about throughout this video is an overview of our learning objectives, talk about the why we're doing so much with digital accessibility right now, talk about the standards, WCAG 2.1 AA standards that we are remediating and advocating for digital accessibility. We're going to talk about some key challenges in Microsoft Excel, and then I'm going to talk through some of the issues and actually show you in Excel how to do some remediations of some common inaccessible features and things that you can take into consideration for your work in Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to talk about creating documents in order to meet the WCAG standards, how to do an audit, how to remediate, and then finally how to upload Excel documents and export them so that they can be used in D2L Brightspace as well as other LMSs. So why is this important? Well, digital accessibility is based on some new rules from the Department of Justice and the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it helps us with both our faculty roles as well as how we can support our learners. And digital accessibility promotes student engagement by providing materials that can be interacted with in ways that are most meaningful for the learners, whether or not they have accommodations or not. It enhances our communication. Of course, there's legal compliance issues, but really with our role as faculty, we're trying to engage students with our materials. And digital accessibility is one way that we can ensure that all of our learners have access to those materials. For our learners, it promotes autonomy and independence. It allows them to learn in meaningful ways and interact with materials in ways that are meaningful to them as individual learners. That reduces frustration and stress. Of course, it enhances comprehension, increases engagement. It helps with cognitive load because if there's not a worry about interacting with the material, but really focusing on what that material is, it helps take away some of that cognitive load of our learners. Of course, it promotes access to education, not just digitally, but how any individual can access education. And we do everything to improve learning outcomes. That's really how we operate. There's four standards or four topics that WCAG 2.1 really promotes. It wants to make sure that our information is digitally accessible, so it's perceivable. That means alternative text for images, making sure that the content is available to screen readers and color contrast. Second, it wants to make sure that it's operable. So it ensures that users can navigate with a keyboard or other means so that they can interact with materials in ways that are accessible to them. Not everybody can control a mouse. Not everybody can work all the peripherals. So we want to make sure that our information is accessible in ways that our learners can interact with it. Third, we want to make sure that it's understandable. So it really promotes taking complex ideas and extended, really higher level, complex things, and it breaks them down to make them understandable in their individual parts. So for Excel, this is really about taking complex tables and making them much more rudimentary, using multiple tables instead of one, for example, making sure that our charts are clear and that alt text is also provided. And finally, we want things to be robust. So content must be reliable and work across various devices and assistive technology. So these are the four things that WCAG is really focused on: how our information is perceivable, how we can operate through that, making sure that it's understandable, and then that it's robust. For Excel and in other programs as well, there's challenges to accessibility. There's navigation and screen readers. Um, Learners use different screen readers. There's different screen readers available. There's different screen readers for different platforms. And so navigation becomes a challenge in how learners will operate through and find their ways through our documents. There's visual challenges, making sure that we meet and provide alternative text for visualizations. For Excel, complex data means some barriers to cognitive accessibility, especially if you can't see that data or you can't perceive it in ways that someone who does not have sight challenges, for example. Mouse-only features and keyboard navigation, sometimes not everything works with the keyboard or might not work in intuitive ways. So this becomes a challenge as well. And a few others, alt text for non-text content that has to be there so screen readers can discuss what images are or non-text content. And the file formatting in Excel is a big issue as well. So if I was going to say, here's things to focus on in Excel to ensure digital accessibility. First off, use of proper headers and titles. This is on your columns. This goes with charts and with graphs and images. You want to make sure that everything is clearly defined and clearly titled. For formatting tips, make sure that the font size, the style, and the color contrast are all available in ways that are going to make the information perceivable to the learner. So you want to use a larger font size, a 14-point font or a 16-point font. You want to make sure that the font style is sans serif. So Arial, for example, is a really great one to use in Excel because it's crisp and it's clear and it's easy to read. And then color contrast. Sometimes colors are important for us in spreadsheets and in data and in information, and that's fine. We just want to make sure that there's color contrast so that there's something dark on a light surface or vice versa. There's something light on a dark surface or a dark background. Charts and graphs are a unique feature of Excel, and accessibility for them is important to make sure that things are labeled correctly. Merge cells, and they're not really that accessible. Merge cells create problems, especially in tables. And Excel is, if nothing else, a big table. It's a spreadsheet that has rows and that has columns, and that's a table. And when we merge cells, that's difficult for screen readers to be able to parse out. And it takes a little extra work on our end, especially if we're exporting things to a PDF, for example. Alt text, as I said, you want to make sure that you're adding meaningful alt text for images and for charts. And if you're unsure or you want some scaffolding around how you are designing spreadsheets, you can use built-in templates for accessibility. Excel and all of the other Office 365 programs and applications have built-in templates that are already digitally accessible. So one of the things that's important is headers and titles. The proper use of headers and titles is key because you want to make sure that the information that you're presenting is clearly defined. So, for example, the first row, use that for column headers, and the first column and row titles if needed. So use that first row there. Have your data information start on row 2, but that makes it gives you a nice space to be able to provide the context and the information that you need. You want to use specific names related to the value. So don't be generic. Don't call things column 1 or column 2. Be descriptive. And make sure that column titles are all different. You shouldn't have columns titled the same thing with different information. So make sure that you give your column titles really clear information and names related to the values. And give your sheets clear titles as well, including on the tabs. So you want to make sure that you're differentiating sheets based on the information that is there. Be clear, be descriptive, and this will allow the learner and the user of your sheets to really understand how to navigate and what's included in each sheet or each area. As I mentioned, fonts are important. Font style, font size, color contrast. Using larger fonts for headers and key data points. Cell information, a 12-point font is fine. But if you're pulling out information or you want to make sure that you are contrasting what a header is versus what information is, then a font size differential will help you out there. Sans serif fonts are important. Arial, Calibri, Veranda. These are all don't have any little extra wisps or design features to them. They're just nice and clean. And those allow people who have limited sight to be able to differentiate the letters. And it also helps screen readers and OCR detectors detect the texts better as well. And last but not least, WCAG 2.1 AA standards require a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. And we'll put a link for the contrast checker in the notes for this video. You can check contrast in different colors. You just want to make sure that if you're presenting something dark, it has a very light background. If you're presenting something light, it has a very dark background. The color contrast is important for people who might not who might have a color blindness. And so if you have similar colors, they'll see and perceive them as one color, and it will wash away the information that you are trying to present. Charts and graphs, as I said, are a unique feature of Excel. So you want to make sure that every access and data point is clearly labeled. You just don't want to rely on color alone. You want to really make sure that that information has that color contrast to it, but also everything is clearly defined. Use descriptive titles for charts and for graphs so that the learner knows exactly what's being presented. But really, this is a really great point for anything, whether we're talking about digital accessibility or not. You want your charts and graphs to have a really clear descriptive title so that the person who is using that chart or graph really understands what that information is all about. And of course, using detailed alt text to help with the description of that, and even really pointing out what the data are in that chart and graph. The alt text can help out and will illuminate perhaps what you want your learners to know from the information that's presented in that picture as well. Meaningful alt text is such important because what it does is it allows for not just a screen reader to present information that you dedicate to describe an image, but it's also an opportunity for us as educators to give context, to give a quality description of what that information is in that chart and in that graph. And this is a real key benefit to all learners who use not just a screen reader, but can go into a file and look at the alt text. It's an extra point. It's an extra teachable moment. It's an extra point where we can share that information. And finally, cell accessibility, so important. Merge cells have implications. As I mentioned before, it makes it difficult for screen readers to really parse out what is a column header, what is a part of the data in that table, what's just information, but what might be something that has to be calculated or used. Merge cells are stylistically nice, but they're really problematic when we're talking about digital accessibility. As I mentioned, there's built-in templates in Office 365. And if you go and you open up Excel and you click on the new tab in the search bar, if you just type accessible templates and hit search, it will actually come up with different templates for different things, whether it's a calendar or a monthly budget or ways to present data. Microsoft has provided these templates for use, and they're really quite good. They're really quite useful depending on what your goals are for your Excel spreadsheet and what it is that you're trying to communicate. So I would suggest that you check those out. The other thing that you could do, of course, is create your own accessible template and use that throughout your course or courses in order to build these databases and data visualizations for your learners. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk through an Excel spreadsheet that is unremediated and show some of these features that I just talked about. So as you can see here, we have a database that's got 4 columns. There's column 1, 3, and column 2. as well as a student ID. It looks like perhaps this is some kind of numerical data about students, but we don't have any descriptors up here. Column one, I might guess is maybe their class ranking, since there's some seniors and juniors listed there. Working in higher ed and working with students, I'm going to guess that these are some GPAs, but I don't know if this is for a course, if this is for a major, if this is for their entire career. I don't know what these GPAs are. So these need to be remediated. These need to really have some kind of quality description to them so that the user knows what these are. Now, this is not just, again, a digital accessibility issue. This is just an issue with this being an Excel spreadsheet. Whether you have an accommodation or your students have an accommodation or not, this is just bad practice. So the first thing is have some descriptive titles here in your Excel spreadsheet. Next, if you look down at the bottom where my mouse is, you'll see that there's 4 tabs. This tab that we're on right here is a data tab. That makes sense. It's nice and clearly described. The second tab says table 1, and this says average major GPA by class rank. And you can see here it's a table and it appears to be okay. It's got a nice description on the tab. Here we have a nice title to it. The font's pretty good. This thing actually looks all right. We know what the data are and we know where the class rankings are. So that one looks pretty good to me. Here I have on the next sheet says box plot overall GPA. And here, this looks pretty good. We kind of get a sense that these are GPAs. We're not quite sure what a box plot is. And this just says chart 1. So this might need a really descriptive title for this so that we really understand what's happening here. I would not infer you know what the data are by just name of the tab alone. Right? This is an element that is on its own, and it needs a description there as well. And then if we go to sheet 4, obviously sheet 4 doesn't have that quality description to it like the rest of our sheets do. So that's going to need to change. Here's a table here, but this is pretty small. This has some information in it where I think it's the count of class rank. So how many different students are in different class rankings, but this table has a really small font. If we maybe click on the header or a cell and we look up here, you see it's just a 9, and larger font sizes are important. So this will need to have a larger font size to it. And our bar graph based on our count of class rank seems to be okay. It's got a nice descriptive title. It's got a key here. I'm thinking probably some larger fonts within the graph itself, but this looks okay. I'm going to go back to my data sheet just so that we're clear. So what I did was a visual audit. I kind of looked through to see if there was any issues with the file, with the different sheets, with the data, and I identified some. What I want to do next is I want to go up to this review tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now use Microsoft's built-in accessibility checker and check the accessibility. So again, I'm in the review tab. I want to check accessibility. So I'm going to click on that button and you'll see it pops up a extra work area here, a little dialogue to the right, and it tells me where my errors are. So let's see if I was right. Let's see if I actually pulled out some errors here. So errors, missing alt text. It looks like that the charts that we have both in one of the sheets with the box plot as well as sheet 4 that doesn't have the title to it, those don't have any alt text to them. So a screen reader would just skip right over them. It won't even recognize that it's there. Also, it shows that the default sheet name for sheet 4 isn't really what we want it to be. If we click on this down arrow next to it, it allows us to take some recommended actions. We can rename the sheet, which would be good. If you click on that, you'll see that it creates the ability to actually change the name here. I'm going to just put this as count of class ranking. Hit enter, And in my accessibility checker, it's gone. So it really liked that. That's pretty good. So what about this alt text? What do we do with this alt text? Well, I'm going to go and click on each one of these. And again, if you click this down arrow, it will give you some recommended actions. You can add a description or you can mark it as decorative. Now, marking something as decorative means that a screen reader is not going to acknowledge it. But if you add a description, as you probably really want to do here, that's going to allow for you to provide some kind of description to the screen reader, but ultimately to the learner about what this chart is about. And so if you click add a description, what it will do is it will open up your alt text window and you can add some alt text here. And you can type in and be as descriptive as you want it to be. So I'm just going to type box plot of overall GPA, just for now. And once I'm done with that, if I click close, you'll see now that that chart is no longer missing any alt text. And so I'm going to click on the second one. It's going to take me to the new sheet, and it's going to say this one also needs some alt text. So I can mark it as descriptive, but again, we really want to have some good descriptions here. So I'm just going to type in here bar chart of the frequency of class rankings for this set of students, period. Now, that's a little more descriptive than the last one I just put in, but it's going to do the job. I'm going to close that, and now you'll see that no accessibility issues were found. But the accessibility checker in Excel is a little limited because what it didn't do is it did not flag some of the readability issues that I had talked about. For example, it doesn't talk about font size. And here we know we want to increase this font size. Also on our data tab, it doesn't pull out that these column headers are not meaningful, that these column headers just tell us column 1, column 3, and column 2, but we don't know really what these data are. So there takes some work on our part to make sure that all of these are actually fixed. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different Excel window where I have some of these remediations already made. My accessibility checker is open, just like it was with the other spreadsheet. It has no accessibility issues, but I did make some changes. For example, I added column headers here. Now we know what the class status. We know that the second column was major GPA and that the fourth column was overall GPA. We now, knowing what these are, this makes this spreadsheet really usable. If I go to my table 1, you'll see that this really hasn't changed at all. It still looks pretty good. My font sizes are pretty great. If I go to my box plot, you'll see that I added a chart title here that says overall GPA. I have the different numbers here. One thing that we didn't see in the previous example was that there was a number inside of this box plot because that box was so dark. And so we weren't actually able to see the number that was inside of there. So what I did was I made the box lighter, still has the right contrast that we want for it. But we also see that there is a piece of data in here that's really important. The other thing that I can do for this is if I go back to the review tab and I click check accessibility, but I click the down arrow and I click alt text, it will open up the alt text that I would actually set for this so that my learners would know exactly what this box plot is. When I was going through the remediation steps previously, I just typed in a simple sentence. But if I was actually remediating this to be useful for my learners, I would include a very descriptive, expanded alt text for this graph. So there's box plots of the overall GPA for this population of students. This box plot shows the minimum value of 0.701 grade points, the 25th percentile of 1.593 grade points, the median value of 2.409 grade points, the 75th percentile of 3.101 grade points, the maximum value of 3.676 grade points. The value inside of the box is the mean, which is 2.333 grade points. This describes the entire box plot, what each of these values are, and their statistical importance to the box plot itself. Again, with images, especially when you're working with data and you're working in Excel, a nice, descriptive, expanded alt text is preferable. The screen reader will read this, and it really gives the learner a true essence about what this box plot actually is. I did the same thing with the bar chart of class rank. I have a nice title here. You can see that the table that goes with it, I increased the font size. Of course, we have a nice description on that tab. And if I click on the actual chart itself and I go to the alt text, it has some nice alt text in there. It says the bar chart of the count of the number of learners in each class ranking. Therefore, are 36 freshmen, 28 seniors, 24 juniors, and 12 sophomores. One thing is use the accessibility checker. It is an asset for you. Keep it open, and as you are creating documents, it will flag things that as you are working. So if something is inaccessible, it will alert you. So as you're in the creation phase, you can remediate that right away. I can't express this enough, that having that accessibility checker open at all times is such a great tool and a great tip to allow for you to keep an eye on your work and the accessibility of that work as you move forward. So just for a review, when you use the accessibility checker, it's important to do a manual check. Check the proper use of headers and titles. Make sure that you have the formatting for your fonts. Make sure that your charts and graphs are accessible, not just with the alt text, but make sure that it has meaningful information in there and that the color contrast is good. Get rid of those merge cells. They're only going to cause problems. And of course, use built-in templates if you so desire. They will make your work a lot easier. Last but not least, I just want to show briefly how to export a Excel spreadsheet to a PDF in order to preserve the accessibility settings that you've worked so hard in your Excel spreadsheet. So if you're going to create a PDF from this and you want to make it accessible to a screen reader, you want to use what's called export to a PDF XML document. And this, as I said, preserves the accessibility settings. So you want to go to first the file export on your left navigation, find the second option that says create a PDF XPS document, and then click on investigate accessibility. If there are still errors, you'll have to fix them. It will not let you export it until you fix them. So if for some reason you missed something that Excel can check for, you want to make sure that that is remediated before you move on. If there's no errors, then you can create that PDF XPS and it will be saved as a document as usual. Here's what it looks like in Excel. Again, you go to the file, export, and then it will investigate that accessibility for you. If you have any questions about this workshop or anything else that we're doing in the FDIC around digital accessibility, please feel free to contact us at FDIC_help@eiu.edu or 217-581-7051.